Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here, all of you. As the chairman of the Space Subcommittee for the previous two sessions and the ranking member of the Space Subcommittee now, I would ask you about public-private partnerships, and I would address this to you, Dr. Khan. When we look at what NASA has done by partnering with industry to support commercial space, allowing NASA to focus on other priorities like deep space exploration, do you think that public-private partnerships like these may be a tool to address U.S. competitiveness in cutting-edge industries of the future like quantum? Are other nations investing in public-private partnerships in these fields? If you would briefly give me your thoughts.
Well, other countries definitely are investing in these public-private partnerships, and they're, frankly, having learned from the U.S. as a pioneer, have created and emulated and modeled much examples of this. However, we remain the leader simply because of the installed infrastructure, the breadth of the network of our academic and national labs, as I mentioned. But the application of this really comes to life from my perspective, because unlike an academic discipline where you may have 5, 6, 10 disciplines looking at individual components of the science by necessity, we as industry don't say to a university, give me, and I'll give a very simple example, the next generation of this polymer. We go and say, I want a sustainable package for food which will keep the food safe and will keep it clean, and I can put it into my supply chain and manufacture it at high speed in 10 locations. That's a real-world problem. I can, however, go to a great institution, and there's a number of institutions, as well as national laboratories. Now, it's not easy today to get a national lab, a university, maybe more than one university, to say, that's the problem I need to solve.
Okay.
And there you can bring the consortium together.
All right, thank you very much. And then second, I'd like to address this to you, Dr. Gallagher. Our intelligence community has warned Congress about the threat of foreign espionage in our science and technology arenas, particularly on university campuses. Given this challenge from our adversaries, and particularly China, how do you suggest that we better protect our American campuses, our research, and our leadership from this threat? I just read an article on Confucius Centers just yesterday, and this is a very big threat to our national security.
So one of the flip sides, of the S&T enterprise is that it's about science, and it's in the context of science, knowledge is a good thing, and we want it to be shared as broadly as possible. But it's also science that's useful to us for these national purposes, and so we derive things that are quite sensitive, things like intellectual property, national security information, and other things. So managing this tension between when is the S&T producing open knowledge and when is it producing knowledge to be protected is really one of the great challenges. This segregation is actually one way we managed it. Universities, by and large, do very little intellectual property intensive work and very little classified work. We don't do any classified work at the University of Pittsburgh. And so that has led them to sort of have an architecture that's more open and where information is more widely available. And of course, if you went to a company, things would be locked down more tightly. What's happening right now is this boundary between sensitive information versus open information is becoming blurrier. And I think the highly competitive interaction between the U.S. and China is making us relook at the risk proposition. When we were dominant, we were probably more willing to share. So I think this is an area where we're looking for clearer guidance from the government. I think one of my big concerns now is we're reacting to the concern, but really without a policy strategy. And
okay.
Important topic, yes.
All right, thank you very much. And I've got one more question. I want to address this with you, Dr. McNutt. I'm hearing the point repeatedly made that for America to maintain its leadership in science and technology, it necessitates an influx of funding, an increased investment, in other words. Given that the debt situation domestically, currently at $22 trillion, and Congress's obligation to be prudent stewards of the taxpayer's dime, at whose expense should we make this commitment? And what should be cut in order for us to focus more on our science and technology? I'd like to hear your thoughts.
So thank you for that question. So I don't necessarily think that we need to ramp up greatly the investment in science and technology, that can actually be not a good thing for science when you have, for example, huge increases in budgets and then they level out, because then you create a new workforce and there's no place for them to go. But steady funding for science is important. So I think what I'm more concerned about would be a rapid decrease in science budgets due to, say, sequestration caps. So steady funding of science is much more important than the vicissitudes of funding, which can happen when we don't do long-term planning.
I understand.
And I also think that how we spend the money, less incremental science, much more high risk, high reward, the kinds of things that are much more likely to lead to breakthroughs and new industries.